Lectures Disjointed is brought to you by Louisiana State University's English Department, the Rhetoric, Writing, and Culture concentration. Compose yourself.
Hello, Capital Wasteland.
Hello there, ladies and gents, and welcome to LDJ, Lectures Disjointed, an academic podcast. My name is Lane Delafosse. I'm a 22-year-old senior writing and culture major coming at you from straight out of Opelousas, Louisiana. Today, we're going to be talking to you about the slow-roasted, cooked version of musical canon, and how today's music just can't keep up in status as its forebears, or can it? I've got two guest interviews for you all today, both to discuss their opinion of how the music market has changed, whether better or worse, and where they see it heading in the next, we'll be modest, 5 years. But first, I want to share with you all a bit about my claim and the reasoning behind it. If you look at the things that people consider to be cultural mediums in the past, we see that every single one of them, the visual arts, writing, music, and even something as recent as, say, cinematography, have all undergone transformations. For instance, writing has gone from scrolls to manuscripts to printing press to print, and now to digital. There's a whole slew of media critics chomping at the bits to crank out the academic publications on the subject of print versus digital. Each one of these cultural mediums has changed what we call canons. See, canons are essentially what are the greats, so to speak. So, in British literature, we have Shakespeare and Milton, for instance. In pop art, we have Rockwell and Warhol. These individuals are people who have ascended to godhood, in sorts, in their respective areas of expertise. But music, in particular, is our topic of interest today. And so, if we drill down to that cultural medium, we can see some interesting changes in the past, say, let's go 50 years. The way we listen to music has become less public and more personal. We listen to music by ourselves now, while back then, unless you were the only one in your house, there was no way to plug anything in your ears and listen to your own song. But with the inventions of personal players like the Walkman, the cassette player, the CD player, and the MP3 player, and the plethora of apps on our phones like Pandora, Spotify, iTunes Music, Beatports, Last.fm, the list goes on. Music has become something truly personal. Additionally, zooming in a bit further, we see how music in the last 30 years has been radically changed by sampling. DJ Mark Ronson, the guy who wrote, the beat for Uptown Funk,
I said hallelujah.
in his recent TED Talk, How Sampling Transformed Music, talks about how artists can insert themselves into a narrative.
I can hear something that I love in a piece of media and I can co-opt it and insert myself in that narrative or alter it even. In a nutshell, that's what I was trying to do with these things, but more importantly, that's what the past 30 years of music has been. That's the major thread. See, 30 years ago, you had the first digital samplers, and they changed everything overnight. All of a sudden, artists could sample from anything and everything that came before them. From a snare drum, from the Funky Meters, for a Ron Carter bass line, the theme to The Price is Right. Albums like De La Soul's 3 Feet High and Rising and the Beastie Boys' Paul's Boutique looted from decades of recorded music to create these sonic layered masterpieces that were basically the Sgt. Peppers of their day. And they weren't sampling these records because they were too lazy to write their own music. They weren't sampling these records to cash in on the familiarity of the original stuff. To be honest, it was all about sampling really obscure things, except for a few obvious exceptions like Vanilla Ice and Doon 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 that we know about. But the thing is, they were sampling those records because they heard something in that music that spoke to them, that they instantly wanted to inject themselves into the narrative of that music. They heard it, they wanted to be a part of it, and all of a sudden they found themselves in possession of the technology to do so. Not much unlike the way the Delta Blues struck a chord with the Stones and the Beatles and Clapton, and they felt the need to co-opt that music for the tools of their day. In music, we take something that we love and we build on it.
What Ronson says makes sense. As a successful mainstream DJ, and as someone who must do a bit of regular music sampling himself, I can't help but see a bit of his bias. If we consider how sampling has allowed a sort of copy and pasting, then editing of songs, it all just seems so kind of lazy. And in the ease of it has attracted many, many more people to the profession, flooding the market with remixes and bootlegs, some authorized, some not. But second opinions are always needed to keep people in check, which is why I brought in some other folks who are more familiar with the music industry in varying degrees, both close friends of mine. I've brought in a man who considers himself to be a normal, whatever that means, hobby music listener named Jamal Thompson, and I've got a man I look up to for much of his life values and the wisdom he's gained from some hard struggles, and a musician and audio engineer, Mr. Jeremy Pleasant.
So here's Jamal in reference to how sampling has affected music.
While I don't think sampling's bad, people are sampling other music, which, that's cool. But I mean, there's a certain amount of contempt or maybe disrespect towards not people aren't really playing their own instruments anymore. I mean, if I look at like something like hip hop, like people don't play their own instruments and it doesn't get a lot of respect.
So, you mentioned sampling didn't really have as much prestige. Like you mentioned that people do a lot of computer.
I love sampling.
People do a lot of computer work now and it doesn't really have as much prestige. But why is that?
Well, maybe I'm wrong because I actually know like someone like Tyler the Creator. Tyler the Creator is a rapper and he does not sample at all. And he actually does not condone sampling. I don't know if he's like, all right, I hate samplers, but I've seen him like, I've heard his like one of his raps where he's been like, all you dudes are sampling y'all music, I'm making mine like original.
What do you think of like
sampling? Yeah, exactly.
So why is sampling not as prestigious? In fact, you said you might have been wrong, but you just proved yourself right.
Yeah, you know what? I think maybe it's just because you are taken away from like other people, and even like artists don't even like, when some artists don't like when you sample them, but like you're making something original, but you're also like proving like I built upon this. And then if someone hears your sample, when most people hear your sample and they decide to go back and look up what it was of, or if they know where you sampled it from, they're gonna be like, oh well, that song was better, So kind of a big deal, and as sooner or later you're gonna hip hop's gonna run out of soul samples to sample from, because they do that a lot. But it's hard for me to say it's looked down upon because I don't really hang out with too many people who look down on it. Like I love sampling. Like I think it's great because I mean it's not like most hip hop artists can actually like play like a jazz like the jazz piece that they want to like put in their beat or do something like that. They can find people who can. I've seen hip hop artists who do that, but sometimes like the sample is just better.
And for comparison's sake, here's Jeremy.
Everyone pulls from someone. Everyone, exactly. There's nothing wrong with the sun. Everyone gets influences from somebody. Haydn taught Mozart and Beethoven. You listen to Beethoven's first two symphonies, you can just hear the Haydn influence. Like just the way from that first movement when he starts the development until once they really get into the A section of the first movement of the first season, like that's just so Haydn, Beethoven, that's so Haydn, right? And so you hear Haydn's influence in Beethoven's music up until his third symphony. Interestingly enough, that's when Beethoven changed music, was with his third symphony. So all that to say, that is a part of music, the influences that you have and how you develop. And sometimes it takes a further step where it's just like, that was a fantastic album. And I'm going to listen to it 100 times. And so you're not writing something that copies that or even samples that, but it just naturally oozes out when you're writing.
So, on the topic of how sampling has flooded the market, I would also argue that it has, in fact, led to the simplification of song, and society actually accepting said simplicity. If we look at, say, Silento and his song, Watch Me, I want to say first that there was a really interesting rant on the website Reddit recently, where a user provided many good arguments to show how Silento has dumbed down music. I would provide a link, or at least a username, but it got deleted. Anyway, if we look at the syllable count of the song, it's incredibly simplistic. If we look at the beat, it's really, really, really nothing spectacular. If we look at what sort of thing it contributes to society, the only thing I can think of is that it provides a communal experience that society is sort of missing. But if we look at similar songs, other songs considered to be purely songs to dance to, like Around the World by Daft Punk, The Twist by Chubby Checker,
Come on, baby, let's do the twist.
or even Tequila by The Champs. Then yes, those songs are simple lyrically, but they all contribute something to music more than just community. They contribute a beautiful and layered complex melody, or a new dance, or both. But songs like Watch Me don't even come up with anything new, and yet with the massive acceptance it has received, it's interesting to see the way the music industry is going. I also asked my interviewees of their opinion on the overall direction of the music industry, but before we get to that, I want to give a shout out to my sponsors.
Lectures Disjointed is brought to you by Louisiana State University's English Department, the Rhetoric, Writing, and Culture Concentration. Compose Yourself. Additionally brought to you by the LSU CxC program, Communication Across the Curriculum, where effective communication is critical to success, with 3 separate studios across LSU's campus to serve you.
Welcome back. As we were saying, I had a really interesting conversation with my interviewees on the direction of where the industry is headed. Here are Jamal's thoughts.
Do you think that any music within, say, the next 5 years could be as powerful as MJ or the Beatles or really any of the icons in the last century?
No.
No?
No. I mean, I'm going to back that up, yeah. I think because there's just so much, there's a lot of music out nowadays, and there's not a lot of, back then, like, those people, when they came out with, like, I guess, like, genre-bending music. It's like, oh, this is so new. We've never heard anything like that before. I wasn't living back in that time, but from what I can understand, like Michael Jackson, like, he was, I think, the first black person to get on MTV, like, get a music video on MTV. So I mean, like, he was breaking barriers. Like, his album sold way more than any other album did in that time, and ever will. Honestly, I don't think any album can touch that. People just followed them more because, I don't know, I guess everybody listens to, like, one thing of music, I guess. Nowadays, like, you know, everybody listens to something different, you know. That too, everybody likes to hate on a bunch of people, you know. I feel like maybe in the days of, like, MJ and the Temptations, everybody was, not everybody listened to Temptations, of course, not everybody listened to MJ, but a good amount of people, you could be sure if you were listening to Michael Jackson, then all of your friends are listening to Michael Jackson, and, like, their friends are listening to Michael Jackson, and you're just having a Michael Jackson good time. And plus, you know, he was just, you know, they were just idols, they were good people. Maybe not Temptations. I don't know if people were following the Temptations for, like, their personality, but Michael Jackson, who'd you say, the Beatles, like, they were just people, like, you know, that were looked up to.
Here are Jeremy's thoughts.
How would you describe the music industry as a whole right now? So, like, if you had a phrase.
So, the music industry right now is in a state of uncertainty. Some people will say that it's in the crapper. But what it is right now, as a friend of mine described it, it's the Wild Wild West. There is no model anymore in the music industry. When you say industry, there's the music, there's the creation, and there's also the business. You can't separate the two. So I speak from both sides of it. So right now, the music industry is, there's what used to work does not work anymore. It's been working for 100 years, and now we got to find something different. And there have been a lot of factors that have led up to that. But for example, back in the day, labels they develop and work with 20 artists, you know. Now, one or two at a time for a specific genre, because budgets are what they used to be. You know, it used to be the label took most of the money from album sales and the artists got most of their money from touring. Now labels and managers are trying to do these 360 deals to where they all get a piece of the pie for whatever the artist does, for everything they do. So they pretty much own them entirely. And because they're just not making the money they used to and they're trying to adapt, they're moving slowly. They're doing deals that just really don't benefit the artists in label fashion. But so as far as the industry goes, there is no, this is what it is. What it used to be is gone now, and we're looking for something new. And I don't think there's going to be a one way. Like, this is how we're going to do it. This is the new model for the industry. I think there are a lot of people doing some amazing things, trying some different things, and some exciting stuff is going to come over the next 10 years. But you just got to come up with an idea, go for it, and just see what happens, see how people respond.
What do you think is coming in the next 10 years?
Well, that's the thing. I think it's going to be multiple things. I think you're going to have people trying different things, trying different models, trying different ways to sell music. I know one artist was selling CDs along with their ticket sales. So if the ticket was $30, say, hey, pay an extra $10, you get the CD. That was brilliant. Yeah. Because if I'm going to spend $20, I might as well spend $30, and now I could take a CD home with me. Stuff like that. I mean, there's just more and more ways that people are trying different things. I'm trying different things, and there used to be, this is how you did it. You did A, B, C, and D, and maybe you would make it. Not anymore. For a major label, you had, okay, we're scouting, we like these 10 artists. They're ready to go. They need 3 years of development. So we're going to put money into developing them. We're going to start with their album. We're going to spend X amount of dollars in marketing for them and just put them on this train. That's what it was for American Idol for so long, which is why still only American Idol winners have gone mainstream. People can say what all they want about American Idol, but The Voice, all these other shows, the artists haven't gone mainstream yet. Yeah. Only American Idol has put up the Kelly Clarkson, the Carrie Underwood, because they have a system that worked. It was, okay, we scout, we find you, we develop you, we make people fall in love with you, and now you're top 40, like that. And so,
and now we all get a piece of the pie.
Exactly. And it was a machine, and it was a well-executed machine. right now, the music industry is trying to find what that new machine looks like. You know, what is the new manufacturer? And so that was what it was for the major labels. For the indie labels, you had the same thing at a smaller scale. It works with fewer artists. There was fewer money, but those artists still had a huge fan base. And so the independent label supported them and usually gave them better deals. And but even that's not working anymore. And so whether it's the major label or the indie labels or non-label, just independent artists. Yeah. Even now artists that come to me, I want to work with, they're like, well, we should do this. And I'm like, no. Like, let's do an album. I'm like, you want to spend 15 grand right now. That's like cheap. Yeah. For an album right now. That just doesn't make sense to me. How about do this? Let's do a single. Let's see where that goes. Let's see how people respond to it. Let's make some money with that. Yeah. Now let's do an EP. Let's do 4 or 5 songs. Let's see how that goes. Let's see how people respond. It's just the old way doesn't work anymore. And so, is the music industry dead? No. Is it in trouble? I wouldn't say it's in trouble. I would say that, put it this way. I started a recording studio a few years ago at the exact wrong time. Not because people weren't recording, not because music was being bought and sold and played, but because we're in transition right now. And in transition, things just they don't look good.
Transition
from what it used to be to what it's going to be. Does that make sense?
So, with this simplification of music, with artists able to pull upon the past for inspiration, and with the flooding of the market, I want to pull it all together and finally say that musicians have lost their major authority and ability to gain it. Consider this. Michael Jackson died in 2009, and it took almost a full year for the media to stop talking about it. Essentially, that was America's grieving process. But if Bruno Mars or Pharrell Williams died tomorrow in the same way that Michael did, as unfortunate as that would be, will the world really spend a whole year talking about it? Likely not. Does that mean it would be unimportant? Surely not. People would care, but the importance would inevitably be drowned out. MJ's career, as well as the career of many in the 20th century, and many of the greats of music, like Mozart, Bach, and Beethoven, are centerpieces. They're the pillars that hold up our idea of music and its history. But for artists within the last, say, decade, have not been of the same quality, of the same brand and magnitude as those before them. And it has everything to do with what we've already discussed. Ultimately, the best visual metaphor I could come up with to summarize my argument is this. Music has come a long way. Originally, only kings and nobility had access to call it on demand, and musicians were lower middle class at best. But as tech has improved and it's become more available, turning the common man into a king, and the king has gotten fat and happy with his crown made of twisted, knotted earbuds, a golden scepter gilded with an Apple logo, and a magnificent robe emblazoned with corporate music advertisements. In the background is an ocean, but rather than fish, it's got musicians of many different types, colors, shapes, sizes, and they're all producing in the ocean. And so, in the king's castle is becoming nothing but a raft, and the king is floating, surrounded by a million other kings on their own rafts. But, kings aside, all hope is not lost. With the right marketing strategies and consumer participation, music can become a spectator sport again. In fact, it has shifted back in that direction with the ability to use social media to share songs, podcasts, like this one, that can even be listened to together. Streams, films that have background music, and of course, there will always be concerts. The audience must continue listening to see how music further develops. One thing is for sure, cultural mediums will never die because art is how we decorate space, and yet music is how we decorate time. And that was a great shower thought by Reddit user A. Clay Hutchings. And with that, listeners, I leave you to the rest of your day. Thank you so much for listening.
Lectures Disjointed is brought to you by Louisiana State University's English Department, the Rhetoric, Writing, and Culture Concentration. Compose yourself. Additionally brought to you by the LSU CxC program, Communication Across the Curriculum, where effective communication is critical to success, with 3 separate studios across LSU's campus to serve you.